How's it going, Raiders? We are back again on episode 5 or 6 or 7 or something like that.
We
We're
should count
rolling.
that.
We're rolling right along on this show. Actually, we got a few episodes under our belt now.
I know. We're actually we're approaching our 10th episode.
Yeah. I can't believe
It's in the
that. That's
pipeline,
crazy.
and it's like, okay, do you know what? Like, so many people. If anyone's thinking about starting a podcast out there, do you know what? Just do it. Work it out on the way. Just give it a go. You can spend
Yeah,
so much time overthinking it, and then at the end of the day, it's just chatting.
yeah, absolutely. Well, Johanna, what have you been up to?
Well, I have just returned home from my trip to Easter Island. I think I've got over the jet lag. Mate, I was jumping time zones. I was the closest thing to like time bandit jumping that I've ever
Mhm.
done. Because you fly from London, I flew from London to Santiago, Chile. And then I had 1 hour. It was honestly the most anxiety inducing thing in my life. I had 1 hour to get from my plane in Santiago to out the airport, then go back in the airport because for some reason you couldn't transfer within the airport. You had to go fully out of customs and come back in again. And then you go to like there's a very separate security for flights that go to Easter Island. And so
Mhm.
yeah, I had to find that on like a weird floor. Luckily, I made it. Obviously, I got there, but yeah, it was logistically. It was like I was so anxious the whole time. And then then you fly from from Santiago to Easter Island, and there's only one flight a day. So if you miss it, you're
Oh
stuck.
my gosh.
And something that I didn't really factor in, which I was like, okay, I need to tell everybody this. If you're planning to go on the trip to East Island, be prepared and just plan for the fact that you might miss planes or you might not be able to arrive or get off the island because it didn't happen to us, but it happened to us. No, it happened to the people the day before us, before we were supposed to leave. So it's a 5 hour flight from Santiago to Rapa Nui, but they couldn't land because the weather was so bad. It was so cloudy
Oh
that
wow.
they literally couldn't. And the island is so tiny. It's only 14 miles long. The airport is the smallest airport, no, the most remote airport, but also looked like the smallest airport I've ever seen.
Is it
And
the most remote airport in the world or
it's
one of them?
the most remote airport in the world.
Wow.
It's crazy. And but so the airplane couldn't land, and I felt so bad for all the people because they'd flown 5 hours out to the middle of the Pacific Ocean just to go, nope, we can't land, and then fly 5 hours back. So I was like, oh, and then obviously people can't leave the island or arrive on the island, so everybody's plans are like pushed back by a day. So if you're gonna go, plan, just have like a contingency for what would happen if you have to stay a little bit longer, or if you,
Oh my gosh, that's insane.
yeah. It's so remote that
Wow.
you don't even think of like that because obviously any other place in the world you go, oh, I'll just get the next flight or I'll just fly later today or it just doesn't work like that. But
Yeah,
yeah,
and was this your first time to South America?
yes, yeah,
Wow, how cool. Well, oh,
it's the
and
furthest I've ever been away.
yeah, okay, that's what I was about to say. That's awesome. And we just missed each other just barely. I'm headed to South America tomorrow.
I know we're like, it's all right. One of us is always in the area of South America.
Yeah. Eventually we'll end up at the same place at the same time. That's not Cosmic Summit.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah, cool.
tomorrow I am headed to tomorrow morning I get on a flight and I head so I got to fly from San Antonio to Dallas to Miami, from Miami all the way to Lima, Peru. I'll be there for a day, and then I fly from Lima to Cusco, which is the Sacred Valley. So that's where Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo
Hmm.
are at, and then so I'll be there for like 4 to 6 days, something like that. Then head back to Lima, and then do it all again in reverse. So
Are you doing a tour or are you doing your own adventure?
yeah, I'm taking a tour through Maya
Right.
Exploration Center. So I'm taking people on a tour, and
Amazing.
so yeah, and then I'm also I guess sort of like I guess it's kind of like independent study, but under Dr. Barnhart. So
Yeah.
he's given me stuff to study about South America, and I've been doing that this year, leading up to go to the Sacred Valley. So then I'm going to go get to see it in person and whatever. So I'm this is actually going to be the first time. So the first megaliths I've ever seen, the first megaliths I ever saw in my life was actually Monument 1 or Head 1 of Levinta, like the head 1, the Olmec head. And that was the first megalithic monument I ever saw with my own eyes. But the first megalithic stone wall work I'm ever going to see is here in a couple days when I get to Peru. And so I'll get to see like the walls of Cusco and the walls of Sacsayhuaman, Machu Picchu, you know, that whole area. I'm really excited to do that. So yeah, amazing.
Yeah, like Easter Island, talking of like megalithic walls. Well, the island's tiny, but it is full of moai. The statue dudes. There is over 1,000 on the island, and that's a small.
That blew me away. That blew me away. While you were there, I was talking to Dr. Barnhart, and I said my co-host Johanna, she's there right now. I forget what we were doing. He was saying something about how the map there needs to be updated. And he was like, you know, there's over 1,000 moai, right? And I went, what? Yeah. I from my mind, I had always thought there were like 20.
No, there's so many, and what's a bit confusing is there's a lot of originals and there's a lot of replicas. But there are moai just everywhere you look. Like you're just walking down a street and there'll be like a moai holding a signpost, or they're like outside the hotels, or they're outside the airport. Like it's like, oh my god. So yeah, it's very exciting. Interesting thing about the moai having replicas, because that was the one I learned some shocking stuff when I got there. So I was most excited to see one moai in particular. In fact, the reason that I went and I was like, I'm going to do the journey, I'm going to do the 40 hours of flying, I'm going to do it, is because I really wanted to see. There is a moai statue that was one of the ones that was, I thought it was dug out of the ground and had all of the intricate carvings on the back. And it's the one that has some very similar iconography to some of the stuff at Göbekli Tepe. So I was like, I want to see that with my own eyes. I want to like document it. And that's kind of the reason why I went. So when we were there, I was asking the tour guide, like, yeah, okay, great. Where's the moai with all the stuff on the back? That's what I want to see. He was like, oh, that one's in the British Museum. I was like, are you kidding?
I was just there. I was just there
from London. And what? And he was like, yeah, the one you're talking about with all the carvings. It's in the British Museum, and it's been there for like 100 years. I was like, what? So that means that when everybody references that particular moai with side by sides, they're actually referencing modern modern copies. Oh no, what's the word? I've forgotten the word. Like modern fakes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Replicas, that's the word.
Are you gonna go check it out now at the museum?
Well, I have, and I went, wait, the one at the museum that I've seen, that I've got loads of footage of on my phone. And the reason why I didn't recognize it is because in the carvings are on the back, but they're very, very worn away. And so I didn't recognize it as the ones that were in the images that everybody references, because obviously they're referencing replicas. So I was like, right, okay, that's something I need to make sure everyone's aware of what they're looking at online, because there's only a limited number of photos and footage from Easter Island. And so, yeah, people are comparing replica stonework to Göbekli Tepe, which is slightly unfair.
Okay, so take us through. All right, so you leave Chile, fly into Easter Island. What's it like when you're landing? You know, what are you seeing out the window? Can you see anything at all, or is it just clouds?
It's just sea. It's just sea forever. It's like 3,000 kilometers away from anything. It feels like the movie Waterworld. I kept saying when we were, and also you are always on the island. It's only 14 miles long. You're always by the coast. Like wherever you look, you can kind of just see.
Yeah.
It's amazing, but I felt like I was like Kevin Costner was going to start, floating into the horizon. And it's very, very sort of beautiful, but barren. Like it's not other islands I've been to, like St. Lucia recently, which is like rainforests and trees and mountains. This is kind of quite flat. and not a lot of trees. And apparently, a lot of the palm trees and things they're like a recent addition in the last 100 years. So yeah, it's really interesting. It was cold as well. It's cold and
Yeah.
windy
Yep.
because I stupidly thought it was going to be like really hot and tropical, but it's winter over there. It's upside down for me.
Mm.
So it was really cold and really wet, and I'm a little bit sad because I didn't quite get enough footage like that I was hoping to get
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
it was so windy and all of my audio is just my microphone was full of water. It was just so windy. So I'm gonna have to work out what I'm gonna do for my like content edit. But
Yeah, well, it'll be cool, you know, it's the adventure that's gonna come through in the video.
I mean, I'm out there in the but it was so windy and rainy. I'd
Yeah.
recommend if you're gonna go off, if you're gonna go in the winter season, warm, loads of layers, loads of waterproof, umbrella. It yeah.
Chuck
Um,
says the water was surprisingly warmer than the air.
I mean, yeah, it wasn't like cold rain. It was just hard rain. It kind of like stung your face a little bit. It was a
Yeah.
and for me it was a really weird experience because England's very rainy and very kind of grey and green, and it literally looked like when we were climbing up some of the sort of mountainous areas, I was like, this looks like half an hour from my house. How have I traveled to the other side of the world and I could be in England like this? Yeah, it was very weird.
That is strange, isn't it? Like, the more you travel, the more you realize that, you know, the world has a lot of biodiversity, but you really have to, like, reach for it and plan for it. You know, if you wanna see something that's drastically different from your home, because everywhere I've been in Mexico, I'm walking around and I'm like, "I have seen this in the US before." You know, it just almost looks exactly the same. It's so strange how you can fly to the other side of the planet and it just looks the same.
Yeah, it makes you travel so far and you feel so remote, but at the same time, you're like, "Oh, we're on planet Earth for sure." Like,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah, yeah.
oh, so on
Yeah.
the other side of the world, it just looks the same. We are on planet Earth, and it kind of made everything feel a little bit smaller, weirdly.
Yeah.
Um,
What was the first moai that you saw? How did
so
you see it?
we landed and I hadn't really slept and it was all like wow, we dropped everything at the hotel. One great thing about this is if you're used to going on like adventure tours, you know that being on the bus you're going to spend significant hours sitting on your tour bus because in Egypt you have to bus out like 3-4 hours to
Mhm.
a site and then you're off in another 2 hours to another site. Rapa Nui is 14 miles long. You are never on the bus more than 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So we dropped our stuff at the hotel, all got onto our tour buses, and then we drove literally like 6 minutes and then got out. And it was one moai that was sort of on a hill, and that was they started us off just with one slowly, which was nice. And then we went to another site where there was like the famous seven. Apparently, there's the famous seven and the famous 15.
Are the famous 7 the ones that are lined up on that platform looking thing?
Yeah, so the platforms are called ahus,
Okay.
and they are apparently they're kind of like tombs and they've got they had human remains inside.
Oh, wow.
And there are these platforms which are made of like um rocks that have been kind of like another thing that looked very much like England, like Hadrian's Wall. It's very much like kind of rock stacked and stuck together rather
Mm.
than like megalithic cut stuff. These ahus are mainly stacked rock. Apparently, yeah, they buried inside people. I think like chiefs and tribal the leaders and
Sure, sure.
the big men. And then the moai are then stood on top of the ahus, and they are supposed to represent the ancestors, the leader. And what's interesting is that every moai looks a little bit different, like facially or the size, the shape. They're not like uniform. Whereas in Egypt, there's a lot of stuff that looks like mass. All of the pharaohs, you're like, oh, it says that this is Ramses II, but it looks exactly the same as like all the other ones because they seem to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
like mass produced, like symmetrical. Yeah, these ones, moai are definitely unique. Like some of them have big noses, some of them have little smaller heads, bigger heads. They vary in size as well. Some of them are like quite diddy, not diddy, but like maybe about 10 foot, and some of them are like 28 foot. It's so
Yeah.
yeah.
That's amazing. So, what did the people of Rapa Nui, Easter Island, for everyone watching, what did the people there think that the heads? I mean, obviously they represent different rulers. Is that what they think? I mean, is this over 1,000 different rulers, and does every single head mark a tomb? Do you know? Or did they have a
That's
theory
a
about that?
that's that's a really good point. If every moai is supposed to mark an ancestor, that's a lot of people. Yeah, that they say that it's like, well, they say that it's to represent and to like be the living ancestor set in stone. But it's also to do with mana, and apparently it's how you get the mana out of the stone. And it's interesting they use the word manna, because manna comes up obviously like in the Middle East, and it was
Mhm.
apparently there was manna in the Ark of the Covenant. People's interpretation of manna is different.
Sure,
Manna
sure.
can mean like, some people think it means like electrical energy. Other times, in the Bible, they talk about they went out into the desert and they all survived on manna alone. Again, like, was that food? Was that energy? Was that whatever?
Yeah.
So they're talking about manna, and I was like, it's really weird that you use that word, and you're all the way out in the Pacific Ocean, and that's your word from your culture, but it's also used on the other side of the world. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, like, so there's mana, so there's something coming up, and then when you say, "Oh, how did they move the statues?" Because some of them are like huge. How did you move them? They said that they were like moved with mana. Mana
Oh,
moved this.
wow.
Mana walked the statues, and I'm like,
Mhm.
that's cool. Yeah. So one thing that you really get from the island is that the people there like super respect the ancestors. It was
Mm.
really nice because it was like this island community that you land in, and it's a complete hybrid of like complete modern day like first world luxuries. You've got like TV and music and road and cars and iPhones, but at the same time the whole community is still like deeply connected to their like ancient roots. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. That's something that we're missing out of the modern Western world. We kind of like vaguely know of our like sort of hunter gatherer roots, but
Sure,
nobody
sure.
really, like, nobody knows how to survive on in the wild, or not, unless you're really into that stuff. So yeah, it was this amazing like hybrid culture of old stuff and new, and it kind
Yeah.
of blended. It was really nice.
That's really cool. I wonder if that just comes from, the people that have lived there. The people that live there are on such a concentrated island, and
Mhm.
they live amongst the reminder of their ancestors every single day. Uh, uh, I mean, let's say, for you being in England, like, you can probably actually trace your heritage back thousands of years where you live. You know what I mean? But you probably are a descendant of someone who built Stonehenge. You know what I mean? You probably have that in your DNA, and it's like, and I probably am too. I have some English in me. But I live on the other side of the planet where I have no reminder of my culture at all, or
Mhm.
of my ancient culture, and so it's interesting to be around people. It would be very interesting to go experience that for myself too, because I've been around the Maya. But the Maya, they really care about their culture, but they're so much more connected to like the Western world. It would be so interesting to go to Easter Island and see how much they're into their own culture. It's like living in a concentrated, isolated area where that's just constantly reinforced on you.
Um, we got to have this like welcome ceremony where three guys came and they had like musical instruments, a guitar, a kind of drum box, and they were dressed in like traditional um native outfits, which I have to say were really cool. They're like
Really?
basically like feathers, lots of feathers, and like tiny little loincloth thongs. I was there for
Mhm.
it. I thought it was great. And can I also say that Rapa Nui people are gorgeous. The women and the men,
Really.
absolutely stunning. It's a good gene pool that's going on over there.
Yeah. I
And
heard I
so
heard good
yeah,
I heard good reports from people on your trip.
yeah, everyone was, yeah, people were having a lovely time. because they also do lots of they do lots of shows. So there's like dance shows and ceremony shows, and so
Yeah.
you get a really good idea of ancient of their
Yeah, yeah.
culture. It's really amazing. So yeah, so we saw the moai and we saw the seven standing. So one thing I was really shocked at is I was shocked at just how deteriorated and worn the moai are. So originally,
Mm.
the moai was supposed to have all these amazing, intricately tattooed backs.
Oh,
Yeah, like
wow.
pillars of Göbekli Tepe. But I couldn't find anything out in the field. We were going around the back and we were looking and kind of if you're looking like kind of we're thinking, oh, we have to take some high res pictures and maybe like pull the contrast up and down to see something, but it is so worn away. And considering the timeline of of when the moai were believed to be constructed to where they are now, that is some of the quickest erosion that I've seen um of anything.
Mm.
Like I also didn't realize how relatively new the moai are, because obviously
Mhm.
I'm used to going around Turkey and Egypt where everything's like 5,000 years old. And so the timeline, uh, the current understanding of the moai is that they were first created around 1200 AD, which
Wow.
in English history, that's like Robin Hood. That's like
Sure, sure, yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
that's medieval times in England. And I was like, whoa, so the moai was started in 1200 AD and they were continuing to make them until around 1600. I saw one article saying that actually it was even 1700, which makes some of the moai statues only 300 to 400 years old. And
Wow.
I was like, hold on. So all of the carvings are completely eroded in 400 years,
Mhm.
and all of the details just gone. And obviously, it's a different climate to Egypt. I understand.
Yeah.
It's wetter and hotter, and it's not made of. Well, there's four different types of rock that make moai. Volcanic tuff, which is very soft,
Hmm.
and a couple of others that are soft, but some of them are made from dolerite.
What?
Um, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
No,
So
what? That's crazy.
my favorite, the one that I was looking for, the one with the carved back,
Uh-huh.
that one's dolerite.
No way.
And
Holy crap.
that's why the carving has stayed more intact than the others, because one, it's been in a museum since the British stole it, and also it's made of a much harder stone. And particularly where that one was before the British nicked it,
Mhm.
up on a mountain on one of the points of the island, you have to climb up this where the volcanic crater is. It's up high, and there was this like religious sort of like village that apparently was only used once a year for their Birdman ceremony, which is this amazing ceremony where all the guys would have this basically like Olympic race. It was like some sort of like Olympic games where they would all scale the cliffs of the volcano, which is like this huge, 100, 200 foot like vertical cliff face. So they would all be scrambling up there. Then they would jump into the sea and have a race to an island that was like a bit further out. And they would swim to the island. And then it was basically the first man to win the egg of the seabird, which only nests there once a year in September. And then like the winner of the first one to the egg wins, a bit like in Harry Potter. They had a Triwizard tournament, essentially,
No
their own
way.
version. And
That's crazy. Did it look okay, were you able to see where they would supposedly jump into the ocean and swim, and, like, could you see how far away that island is?
no, we could see nothing because it was so rainy and
Okay.
cloudy and grey. The reason why the plane couldn't land
Mhm.
was because the rain cloud literally just um, yeah, you can see anything. The cloud is the island. It's very foggy.
Yeah.
So we were all really disappointed because that's supposed to be like the creme de la creme, like tourist view of the island, is to go up and you
Yeah.
look down into the crater and you see over the ocean. We saw nothing. We could see maybe 10 foot in front of us. It was actually like, oh, there's the edge. Don't
Wow.
go over it.
Oh, that's
Um,
scary.
so that was disappointing. But it was fun to like learn about what they would have done that Birdman ceremony. And yeah, I thought, I mean, that's a religious ceremony. I can definitely, I would want to watch that. That'd be great. It's a load of men in thongs diving and jumping and racing for an egg. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one thing I think about with the moai being, you know, just around maybe, so they say around 800 years old at the oldest. Um, and I'm not. I mean, it's tough not to question those dates sometimes, but anyways, it's amazing the history of those people because you got to think like something happened over in Indonesia, Polynesia, those islands on the southeast, on the coming off the Southeast Asian continent. Those people, how in the world did they go from those islands all the way across the Pacific Ocean to Easter Island? You know what I mean? The amount of time that
Mhm.
it takes, because it seems like it's so recent, and it obviously is recent comparative or relative to other ancient cultures. But I mean, think about the time that it took their culture to get all the way across the Pacific Ocean and then establish a colony, just off of South America. And then the big question is, did they make it from South, or did they make it from Rapa Nui to South America and have contact with Peru? Did you guys
Uh,
ever talk about that?
Oh yeah, we did. So we were
Yeah.
like, that one of the great things about going on a tour is that you're with like-minded people, and just the whole time everyone's just like shooting ideas and brainstorming. Um, so yeah, the tour guides were really interesting, and they told us like the backstory that the Rapa Nui people. So Rapa Nui is the name of the island, but the Rapa Nui is also the name of the people, so it's interchanged.
Yeah, sure.
And so the Rapa Nui, the people, they have a big oral tradition. They had their own language, the Ronga Ronga, but nobody can decide. Even today, nobody can decipher it because nobody can remember what it says. And um,
Really?
yeah, so they've got a written language, which initially they thought maybe had been kind of created after the Europeans arrived in 1722. But recently I saw a paper saying that they carbon dated the wooden kind of blocks that the
Mhm.
Ronga Ronga language is on. And the wooden blocks carbon date to 200 years before the Europeans arrived. So the ones that are surviving, obviously, some people can say, well, maybe they just carved it on really, really, really old wood. And I was like,
Mhm.
one, 200-year-old wood isn't the wood that you're going to want to be using to, like write
Yeah,
your
yeah,
language in.
sure, sure.
So more than likely, they had their own written language um, way before Europeans arrived. And but yeah, so it's like this weird lost language. So everything that
That's
they
amazing.
know comes from an oral story. And I'm massively in favor of believing oral traditions and thinking that there is a lot of truth. There's more likely truth in the oral story than just like waving it off and being all like, oh, it's just an oral story. I think we
Yep.
should put way more stock in that. But
Nobody
they said
nobody ever this isn't like a universally true statement, but nobody ever discovered anything great by ignoring oral stories. It's always the explorers and the great archaeologists that discover something that are like, every time I just listened to what the locals told me, I ended up
there it
discovering.
is. So
Yep.
interestingly, they said, okay, so the origins of Rapa Nui, how did it start? So they said it started from 7 people came to scout out the island.
Wow.
Um, seven. So originally there was 7 tribes, and it was like one. I think a person from each tribe. They came to the island, and they knew where it was. That's their in their history. So it wasn't that they accidentally discovered it, because nobody accidentally floats around the Pacific Ocean for 3,000.
Mhm.
So they charted it. They knew where it was. So they had knowledge, or maybe they didn't know exactly where it was, but they had a knowledge of an island,
Mhm.
and where it was, and they went there to like restart. Which I was like, oh, heard that before. The 7 sages that restart a civilization after
Mhm.
Atlantis. Like it's a common theme. Or the 7 wise ones that like arrive in a place. Like that's
Yep.
also a very common
My
theme
my
with the
grand
same
my
number.
grand Yeah, my grandfather, who made his name as an explorer, he rediscovered the 7 lost Spanish gold mines of New Mexico. So it's something interesting about that
Something in
number. I
the
don't know what it
7.
is.
There's something in the 7, but there's also something about 7 people or 7 sages, 7 wise ones, and this like
Sure,
whole
sure.
kind of like yeah. So I was like, "You're kidding me! It wasn't 3 or 4 or 12. It was 7 people coming to restart the island." They're like, "Yeah," and they knew where it was. So I was like, "Okay, that's interesting." And then they said that they obviously liked Rapa Nui, and there was 4 royal tribes and 3 servant tribes, which is not a lot of servants for the royals, but okay. And they each sort of took sections of the island, and
Mhm,
apparently they weren't very like there was a lot of political stuff between the different tribes, and a lot of rivalry, a lot of issues. Which then I said, okay. So then I brought up to the tour guide. I went, okay. So if there's 7 different tribes that then split off later into 18 different tribes, that's how much like everyone was
mhm,
arguing. I was like, yet somehow, amongst all of that, everybody got together and made moai, even though you like. And I was like, so was it like different tribes making different moai? And he was like, no, 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 just the one from the one quarry. And I was like, that's. I'm going to put a pin in that, but that's an interesting thing that you have this culture that can come together and do like this amazing stonework, yet their history is like so divided and so warring. And I was like, so the tour guide was very adamant that it was just like a master stonemason that like
mhm,
designed and made the moai. And I was like, what? So did the tribes just sort of like rent out the one master stonemason? Or
mhm.
and he couldn't really answer me when I was like sort of pressing on that. But it's something I want to research into and looking
Yeah.
at the tribal history and being like, do they have an answer for how they were able to come together for moai? 'Cause that yeah. Anyway.
That's
Um,
that's incredible. There is, what you were saying about where they so what you're saying is 7, 7 Moai explorers or I'm sorry, Rapa Nui explorers,
Vinapu Nui.
they went to the island already knowing that the island was there, is that right?
That's according to their
Sure.
law, that's what he said. They said that they knew or they had an idea because they'd heard of the island, that they knew it
Yeah.
existed, and they were
Now
actively going there looking to restart.
Isn't that think about, like, what the implication of that is, because that's such a specific thing to say that they already knew it was there. There's not really a reason to doubt it because these were clearly people who knew how to sail across the ocean. I mean, that is the deadliest. I couldn't think of anything more difficult to do. So they had to be great astronomers to be able to read the stars, to know where they were at, and to be able to keep up with where they're at in the ocean based on the stars, and know that every
Yeah.
single night the stars are slightly different. So you got to think these are people who are just as smart as we are, and it makes me wonder if there was like already people moving across the ocean and exploring the different parts of the ocean, and they could have already had it mapped. If this is really taking place 800 years ago, um, then maybe it's possible that somebody had already been out there. Or maybe an even more boring answer would be, one of the theories of why these Polynesian people even started setting sail for the Pacific Ocean was that something on the islands off of Southeast Asia was very wrong. Something bad was happening, like civilization was collapsing, could have been famine, disease, or something. And they're watching birds fly off into the horizon and come back. And they had been noticing this, and so they could assume that there must be something out there. But did you see birds on Easter Island?
There are birds. We saw some quite big birds flying over,
Really?
definitely. Yeah. I think that it's different now that it's populated, but we 100% did see birds because people were like googling like which ones what they were, and some of
Mhm.
them were pretty big, like seabirds. But yeah, these birds, if they have to fly a long way before they get
Oh,
to us.
can you
You know,
imagine that?
it's like 5 hours for an aeroplane. So imagine, and that's going like crazy speeds.
Yeah, it's
Um,
gotta be like 5 weeks for them.
yeah. So it was really interesting. So the timeline goes in a nutshell. People arrive on the island around 600 to 800 AD. By 1200 AD, starting to make moai amongst all the political unrest and warring between the tribes. And then they keep doing it up until about 1600. So there's some, yeah, so that's and there's some really good archaeological evidence to support that idea. So they said that they've, obviously you can't carbon date stone, but they said when they were doing some of the excavations down, they excavated some of the like plant stuff around the soil and found that it dated to around 1200 AD, which is why they get that date for when they start making and moving moai for 1200. And they also, the bodies of the ahu in the ahu. So a lot of the ahu have fallen over because the rocks, again, they aren't like built proper walls. They're sort of like arranged. So a lot
The
of them have
Arhu,
fallen down.
Arhu, I'm sorry, is that the platform?
Yeah, the platforms are called the ahus, and
Okay.
so a lot of the ahus have fallen over. They've been, a lot of them have been restored now, so they're not. They've been like restored. So you can see what they would have looked like using the original stone, but they weren't in that condition. There is one ahu that is still standing, and it is the only ahu on the entire island that's made of megalithic precision cut stone. And it is the one place you find it, and it's really one of the, like, it's a real head scratcher. And even the tour guides were like, we don't know how they did this, and we don't know why. One of the other tour guides, so we had two tour guides. One was like a little bit more open-minded, and he was telling me stories about how, because when we were discussing this, it's called Vinapu, the place. You want to Google it. Actually, I can bring up. Let me bring up an image of it. So
Sure.
I'm just going to quickly share my screen.
Let's pray that we don't have any technical issues, ladies and gentlemen.
Please. Am I sharing the screen? Yeah.
Yeah. Just let me know when you're ready for it to go up.
Okay. So where's Vinapu? Scrolling down to. It was towards the end. It was the last thing we saw. So of course, here we go. Can you see my screen?
So I can see the web page, but you have to make sure that you're sharing the right part.
Wait. Okay. I think I clicked the wrong thing. Bear with me.
Yeah, no worries. Share screen is better than share window.
Share the entire screen. There we go. That's what I want to do.
There you go.
Okay. Yes. So this is
ready.
Vinapu, right? And bam, look at that. Can you see?
Wow.
So it's got these like polygonal walls, and it's got this, and this exact what is it? The 1, 2, 3, 4. That tiny little cornerstone that is found, I want to say, in Peru.
Yeah. No,
in Egypt.
It is exactly the same style of stonework that you see in Peru, for sure. And then you see some very similar things in Egypt as well.
Oh, yeah. So, and this is the one thing on the island that is massive, I mean, these stones are massive. I'm zooming in here, but they are big. And this is one of the only ahus that is still like standing like this. Let me try and show you some different art, like the other ahu, so you can see the difference. Where's the 7? Can't see what I'm seeing. Okay, here we go. Here's the other ahu. So can you see the difference in the bricks? So these are like little tiny.
Okay, yeah. And what we're looking at, everybody, are the bricks beneath the
bricks
moai.
Beneath the moai. So this is the famous 7, and you can see the ahu. It's like kind of like Neolithic style stuff. It reminds me very much of like the infill at Göbekli Tepe. So you've got that, and this is the stonework that is found all over the island, in houses, in so it was in their like food storage areas. They've got like little replica villages that we could see. So this is kind of everywhere. everywhere on the island apart from Vinapu, where you had the massive megalithic stony stuff. And yeah. And again, so we had one tour guide that said, you know, I was like really grilling the guy and was like, so you know, what if this was here before? Like, or like, why is there no more? If they could do this, why is this not everywhere? Like, because this stuff holds up way stronger than the other Ahus. It's kind of like earthquake proof because of the polygonal shape. Obviously, you've got massive stone. It's precision cut. I'm like, I'm interested as to why, if you could do this, why is it not kind of everywhere on the island?
Yeah.
Why have you not got because we saw their homes where they lived, and very small, made of literal sticks, and they would have to repair it almost weekly because it's made of sticks and grass. And I'm like, if you can make a structure, like I want to live in one of those, because it's going to be dry and warm and it's not going to move. And yeah, so I was interesting. I said to this one tour guide, you know, who did this? How did they do it? And he was like, well, we don't know. We don't know how they cut the stone, because it's very hard. They didn't have any metal as well. So they have to cut to all of the moai are carved with stone. With like
with
dolerite.
other stones. Yeah.
So the dolerite, which is easy because volcanic tuff is really easy. And they said that the dolerite is carved with dolerite, with harder dolerite. So they'd find harder bits of dolerite to carve the dolerite moai. But this one, that they don't know how with little stone tools you would cut those big mahusive blocks. They don't know.
Oh man, yeah. There's just no way that you know. There's just no way that stonework on Easter Island is not directly related to the exact same stonework in the Sacred Valley of Peru. And I'm going to be there next week. I'm going to find something that looks exactly like that.
And we can compare notes for sure. But so then this tour guide said, he goes, well, we do have an oral story of some visitors that came, that we don't know who they are. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And he was like, so apparently there's a story of these like visitors that came. And he goes, so I don't know, maybe they passed the knowledge on of how to do this or make this, because apparently in the story they also the Rapa Nui killed the visitors. So there's a chance that maybe someone turned up, either built this or showed them how to build this, and then they died, and that's why they couldn't replicate it again, because it was a kind of one time.
I totally believe that. I'm going to try to share something real quick that's going to add to that. And I just hope that my camera doesn't freeze. So
okay, let's
see.
To the
all right. So, all right, I'm going to present, share. All right, present, share screen.
Whereas the other tour guide, he was very hardcore, like Rapa Nui, and he said he thinks that the Ahu was the last one that they built, and that's why it's so good, because it was just a natural linear event of, and if they were going to, and I was like, okay. But then he also, so he said that, but then he went back and said that there was carbon dating bodies inside the back of so the front of the Ahu is megalithic, the back of it doesn't match. It's smaller rock. And so that's another thing, like that. Yeah, it's like, it's not just one megalithic Ahu. It's like, it was like a megalithic wall, and then they made another back to it. And the bodies inside dated to around 1200 AD. So I'm like, wow. So this wasn't, so if it was the last Ahu, then what? He was a bit weird on the dates, but go on. Continue.
So this is what goes through my mind, trying to just put together, how is the stonework at Easter Island related to the exact same stonework in Peru? I don't care what anybody says, it's the same. So I'm trying to put this in my mind, like, okay, so the traditional dates, and I know people roll their eyes, but I'm an anthropologist, got to consider everything. So the traditional dates for that Easter Island construction, 1200 AD. Traditional dates for the Inca megalithic stonework is about 400, or I'm sorry, 200 years after that, maybe 100 years after that or so. So I'm trying to think. They both pop up out of nowhere because you really don't see that kind of megalithic architecture in outside of the Sacred Valley in the Peru area, other than Lake Titicaca in Bolivia at the site of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. So it's just a couple places that you see it, and it's like it pops up out of nowhere. And I just try, and it's kind of a conundrum because I know that these people from Rapa Nui, say I know, but I'm guessing that they do not carry this megalithic stonework across the ocean like that. Perhaps, yeah, I would say I would draw a difference between that precise megalithic stonework and erecting the moai statues. I would say there's a difference between those two skill sets. And
Yeah.
one of the reasons I think that they're not bringing it across the ocean and introducing it into Peru, and that it may be these people who ended up at Rapa Nui go to Peru, meet Peruvians, and somehow the stonework comes back to Easter Island, even though we don't really know where the stonework comes from in Peru, is because let's look at Google Earth. So check this out. So here's Easter Island. They would have had to come from all the way across the ocean through
What
these
planet
islands.
is just sea on that side?
Through these islands, and their DNA comes from all
Yeah, it's
these islands
Polynesian.
here. Just
Although my friend Kaylee from History with Kaylee, she sent me a paper that I've read it once and I was like, I need to read that again. But I think that the paper says that they've done ancestry stuff with bodies that they found in Rapa Nui. It's difficult because they degrade quite fast. But this paper is saying that there is trace DNA history of, so you've got obviously Polynesian, but of Native American.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Well, that's what I'm saying is
in the Rapa Nui people.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I'm saying is I think that they, just my personal theory is I think that they probably went even further and went into Peru, and I bet you Peruvians went back and started and were working with the people of Rapa Nui, and they were building stuff there, maybe, or the megalithic stone work is even older than all of it. But another reason I'll add on to why I think that that influence might be coming from South America is this just one example, but we can get on Google and find tons of other examples. So in Kauai, there is, let me see, it's a there's an archaeological site somewhere. Let's see, if I just type in ruins, something might come up. Yeah. So here's a fortress. There's all these kind of fortresses all over the Hawaiian Islands. But you see, it's exactly the same stonework.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
It's exactly the same stonework.
So that's the stonework of Rapa Nui, apart from Vinapu. And I'm like, it's so different. It's like,
yep. It's certainly a different culture.
And if you had the capacity to do one and not the other, I'm like, why is everything not like the one that's way more structurally solid, the way more that's going to last longer? Especially if you're building these things to literally be tombs of your ancestors to fit them, they can hold moai on way better. One interesting thing about all the sites where the moai are is the minute that we, and Chuck can attest to this because he's still in the comments, when you approach the moai statues, your phone battery drains in minutes. We approached the big 15, which was probably one of the highlights of the trip. It's on this huge open plain that faces Moai Mountain. I call it Moai Mountain. They're like quarry where they make the moai. And my phone battery, I had a remote charger with me, and I had to keep plugging it. I went through my entire phone charger thing, which normally lasts me in Egypt. That thing lasts me a couple of days. I went through it in a day on Easter Island because my phone the moai statues just drain the energy. And same, Chuck had his camera, and he was like, "Whoa, I'm out of battery." And we were there for maybe 15 minutes, 20 at a push.
Really?
And
that's so strange. And is this just one of the like the volcanic moai or
It was just the sites where the moai was.
oh, okay, okay.
It just drained your battery like super fast when we were going up to them. You can't touch the moai, and you're still
Mhm.
far from them. But yeah, it was we went in there with like fully charged stuff, and it was and then people we all started to say, "Has anyone got like a charging cable? Oh my gosh, my battery's gone as well." And I was like, okay, that's weird. And you know the Vinapu, the megalithic wall that you know the big one.
Mhm.
There's like a hole in the wall, and the guide said that if you go up to it and you put your like a compass there, the compass goes absolutely mental. Um, there's
Wow.
definitely there's definitely something in the rock that like plays with magnetic forces and fields, and it kills camera batteries and um yeah, for sure. There's something magical going on
I'm
with it.
just clicking on a random place. My camera froze. Let's look at these guys real quick though. Are those moai popping out of the ground?
Yeah, they will be. They are. Oh yeah. So one thing I think we can close on, because I am going to make like a detailed YouTube video. I've started the edit.
Mhm.
It's not going to be, but let me just show you one thing
Okay.
that I noticed. So
Sorry guys, I'm frozen now.
oh no, come back. Can you see? Are you there?
Yeah. Just tell me when I'll add you to the I'll add your screen.
I'm ready. So um what am I trying to do? I'm trying to look at the mountain when we went up Moai Mountain. Right. So this is the view from Moai Mountain. Now the tour guide said that they're up to the necks here. And if you were going to dig down 20 foot down, they're full bodies with fully carved ornate backs. And he even said that there is loads of moai that are just fully under the ground as well. Like if
Mhm.
they kind of know they're there, but they're not going to get them out. Okay, so this was the most amazing place to like walk around. So I
Wow.
was like, again, what weighing up the timeline of like, okay, so if they were producing moais from 1200 to let's say 1600, so this is 400 years worth of land like sediment rising. It obviously there are a lot to fill up all the way to the head. But then this is a sketch image. When you look at the sketch images of when the Europeans arrived, they sketched the moai when they found them. And so this is from 1722. And so if the moai stopped production, let's say conservatively around 1600, that's 122 years of sediment rising to get
Mm.
to the necks and to get them. And then I looked at so that was 1722. So that's like 250, 300 years ago. And then I looked at my video of when we were literally just there, and it's the same. And I'm like, so did the sediment just stop rising? Like
Hmm.
what? I I don't get that. I feel like there's something. I'm looking at the puzzle piece, and they don't quite go together.
Mhm. Yeah.
And I can see why there is an argument for potentially the Moai being there a lot longer.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Um,
in the Americas, you know, the history is so uncertain in so many different places. The only other like explanation I could think is from the time that they discovered them, they just try to keep them exactly the way that they were, you know. So perhaps if you know they begin to sink or the soil, you know, kind of rises around them, maybe they make an effort to keep it looking exactly the way it was when Europeans came to the island. Maybe I don't know. I wonder
well,
if they would
yeah,
know.
it's it. So there's something to take into account. It says that sometimes when they were doing the production, so they would cut the moai out of the mountain. Literally, they would do the face when it was on the ground in the mountain. They'd cut it out, then they would stand them up in little holes so that they were able to like chisel the back.
Yeah.
So they're stood up on the mountain in kind of sort of 4 foot sinkholes in order to fully do you have to be able to tattoo from the butt upwards, so they can only be 3-4 feet that they're like wedged in.
Wow.
So that accounts for some of the soil, but
Yeah.
apparently they weren't like deliberately covered. They're all like they're left in situ. And it also the production mountain, the quarry mountain, it's one of those weird things of history where everyone goes, they just stopped. Like it was like full production line just pause. That's why it's kind of
Mm.
freaky. They're just sort of there. Whereas the other moai have been like walked in place. And there's moai everywhere as well, where they like failed attempts, where they kind of like they fell over and broke, and they've just left them there, like face down, and they
Yeah,
just
well,
leave.
the one that was next to that wall, that was that looked like an either a heavily eroded or like an unfinished face. Is that right? Do you know what
Oh,
I'm talking about?
oh yeah, they're just that's the amount of erosion. That's the 400 years of
Wow.
erosion, which is crazy because I look at like Stonehenge, and that's 5,000 years old,
Mhm.
and the moai up close look like more eroded than Stonehenge. And Stonehenge is we're a super rainy, cold, moist, and I know it's different stones, but yeah, they feel like so old.
Yeah.
And then when you my head, I couldn't get my head around the idea of them only being a couple hundred years old. I was like, are you kidding?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
So
that's amazing. Well,
yeah.
and I honestly wouldn't be surprised if, uh, the thing is it's hard to get around carbon dating, and then you have to get to a whole other explanation of, if they're thousands of years old, where are the bodies of the people that lived there thousands of years ago? So it becomes a tough explanation, but I certainly think that there were definitely people on Rapa Nui much further
Oh,
back than
pre
1,200 years ago.
600. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
I think so. Like in the same way that they said that nobody lived on the Azores until
Mhm,
the 1600s when um the Portuguese arrived there, and
mhm.
I'm like, no, and then they found like Neolithic dolmens and like
Yeah,
Roman
yeah,
anchor stones, and I'm like,
yeah.
no, we've been everywhere. But I did say to
Been
the
everywhere in multiple ages
oh yeah,
of history,
in
you know?
cycles of things.
Yep.
And that's what I said to when I was sort of having a discussion with the tour guide about Vinapu, the megalithic wall. And I said, okay, so what you're saying is you're saying that this is the last thing on the production line before the island stopped stone production. So you're saying
Mhm.
that this is the pinnacle of and in your eyes you can see how they went from that to that to that, and it's completely separate and nothing to do with South America. And I was like, so really it's either the very first thing on the island, because they didn't make anything else like it, and you wouldn't just make one in the middle and then not
Yeah,
do it again. So I was like, so either it has to be what you said, the last thing that they made, or it had to have been there before. And I was like,
and they couldn't
there have
replicate it.
yeah,
Yeah.
they couldn't replicate it. And I was like, I was like, have you considered, what do you feel about this? That maybe that there was another layer of the island. Because at the moment, all of the excavations have been very minimal on the island.
Mhm,
They won't excavate any more moai. They won't touch it
mhm.
because he said there's lots of arguments between whether they should conserve or whether they should like dig up, whether they should put things back, should they lift the moai back up, should they not, should they concrete them in, should they not? Like they have a lot of argument, and they've kind of agreed to
Yeah.
just leave it. They're not going to excavate any more moai, which is a shame
Mhm.
because I think if you dug out a few more, because there are thousands, I was like, okay, what
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
dug
of
out
course.
10? And then we could really study the back and we could look at all of the iconography like fresh
Yeah.
from the ground. But no, they're going to leave them and they're not going to study it. So they don't excavate on the island. And I'm just thinking about like in Turkey, that how much stuff is popping out of the ground now that they know sort of what's under there. And I'm just thinking if they ever did do a deep dive in Rapa Nui, if they went 20, 30, 40 feet down, would you hit then a layer of, especially if the island does seem to have a crazy amount of sediment rising, if you hit a layer from 4,000, 5,000, 10,000, would we find other bodies? Would you find other tools? Would you find other things? So,
Yeah.
the guy was like, well, maybe. There just
I think
hasn't been the work.
I think at the very least, they would find evidence of an era of people on Rapa Nui before the, before the heads were there, because if they're traveling there and they already knew before they established the Rapa Nui colony, um, and they already knew that it was there, well then, who's to say that like the entire Pacific Ocean wasn't already mapped and people didn't already know where all the islands were, and they weren't already skipping from South America and they just rest on Rapa Nui and then go into Hawaii and then go into the other islands. Like I bet you there's a whole era of that happening before anybody decides we're gonna establish a colony here on Rapa Nui.
And the island as well, like I said, it was surrounded by the sea and the coast. It's like a sharp drop into deep water. So there's only one beach on the island. It's really tiny. There's one little bit where there's sand. Everything else is just like a rock face into deep. Like the Caribbean islands. It seems the trajectory out into the sea goes on for miles, and they're very shallow. This is literally like the top of a mountain, and it's on deep, 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 deep blue water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really, really big wave. Like you feel like a bit like, oh my god. And I was thinking like to the last Holocene, the last ice age, and I was like, yeah, when the sea levels were 120 meters lower globally, and Rapa Nui was way bigger, I do wonder whether or not like Vinapu was like the top of the mountain and there would be like other ones going into this. We just don't know. But I was imagining if the island was double the size, and because it seems like it's on such a point that 120 meters would reveal a lot more of the island. And I was like, I do wonder if there are other things that are just down there. So
Yeah.
my imagination was going crazy. I really recommend, if you can ever get there in your lifetime, you just won't regret it. It's gorgeous, and the food's gorgeous. The people are gorgeous. You're gonna have an amazing time.
Well, bringing this thing into land, I'm going to address some comments, but I want to start with Steve. So he says can't wait until we have more advanced ground penetrating radar. So this is something that I've been predicting. I don't agree with the sentiment of like, okay, we're just going to put all these digs at because it's weird. It's not like this is happening all over the place. It's just that at some archaeological sites, and sometimes I guess it makes sense that it's the most important and biggest archaeological sites in the world, that the people at the head of these sites say, we're going to put the digging on pause, and we're going to wait for technology to develop so that future generations can do non-invasive research. And it's going to be really cool one day. I don't know if we're actually going to live to see it, when we just can fly a drone over an archaeological site and just scan the whole thing,
just
through
get
the ground.
a full 3D render of it. That would be
And
amazing.
get a full 3D render of it with all the little artifacts and everything. But I don't think that anybody in this live stream is going to live to see that. I could be wrong, but that sounds like crazy advanced technology. So my thought process is, the earth belongs to the living. The people who have not been born yet, they're going to make plenty of discoveries. I think that for the people who are living on the earth right now that want to know about our ancient past, let's be as responsible as possible, but let's excavate these sites so that the people living right now that get this one chance to live on the earth can learn more and be more fulfilled about the world that they live in, and have a more pleasant, romantic experience on this planet. That's where I come from. So I agree with you that I think they should just take like 10 super interesting ones that they want to study that look promising, and we're going to fully excavate these and everything around it, and then we'll just leave everything else for the future.
Yeah, there's enough of them there that it wouldn't like hurt in fact, I think that the argument for the knowledge gained is worth it. And again, you're not hurting them, you're just excavating. And we can do it now with like way better ethos and
you're not disrespecting the site either. I mean, we are, I guess there is a philosophical argument over, should we be digging up pharaohs' bodies and putting them on display and things like that? Maybe we shouldn't be putting their actual literal mummies on display, but all of their treasures and everything that they had, and all the things that they accumulated, like, people want to people want to look back with, an admiration for our ancient past, and I don't think that this is like, I don't think it's disrespectful or anything like that. I think that is something that we should be doing. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, I agree with you. So yeah,
Um,
what were
okay,
you
and, just one last thing, and it will be the last thing 'cause we have to end this, is that, again, my favorite moai that is in the British Museum that, Rapa Nui keep asking the British Museum to have it back, and the British Museum keeps saying no.
oh
Because
yeah.
they're not very nice. Um, so it has a name. Like I said, that particular moai, it's made of dolerite. It's a bit different, made of dolerite, and it was found way up high on its own in the mountain, on the top of the mountain. You know where they did the Birdman
Mhm.
challenge jump thing, and it had a specific name, like a native name. I'm not going to say it out loud because it's like 15 letters long, but it translates to that moai's name translates to the hidden one or the secret one. And I found that really interesting as a name for a moai because
That's
I'm like,
cool.
if it's called hidden or secret, as in like, I was like, in the ground, as in you found it hidden, as in like,
Mm,
I was like, was that dolerite one? My mind went off on a stream of like maybe the production line of a lot of volcanic moai was exactly in the time frame they said it. But I was like, but could it be that there was like a one original dolerite one that was found, and then but they've
oh
been like
wow.
the gods, and then and then that's where the whole island suddenly stopped going to war and was like, yeah, the
Oh, that's
gods,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I
That's a
think I
cool
kind
theory.
of I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna research a bit of that." I was like, "Maybe it could be like, maybe not all the moai are super ancient. Maybe the moai are medieval, reproductions of one that the secret one." And I was like,
Oh, how interesting is that?
"Okay," and we end and we close. Video
That
coming soon on the channel.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's wow. Yeah, make that before somebody else does. That's such a
Yeah,
cool theory.
yeah.
So these people, these Polynesian, traders and these sea travelers going across, they find the
The
dolerites
hidden one. The
hidden
hidden
one.
dolerite moai, and they're like, "Oh my god, it's God," and they have
And is
it.
that the only moai made out of dolerite?
The only one I can find, I'll have to, like, do some more digging.
Okay, okay.
I kind of came back from the trip with, like, even more questions,
Of
and so
course you did. Yeah,
I need to do a lot
of course you
more
did.
research. But so far, yeah, that was the only dolerite one, I think. I'll get
That
back to her on that.
That's amazing. Okay, all right. So dressing some soups. All right, Jason Evangelista. Here's to you, a real Indiana Jones, and Johanna, a real Laura Croft. Thanks for some 5 big ones, Jason. I appreciate
Lara
it.
Croft. Yeah. Yeah, we are
Is
a little
Laura
bit. We
is Laura is she's British, right? Am I crazy? Or is she American?
La Lara Croft, she's
Uh-huh.
British, hello.
Okay. Okay. I was just making sure. I don't know why. I feel like in one of the recent movies she's not British. She has an American accent or something. And then I was always
Well,
confused after that.
I'm pretty sure Lara Croft, yeah, because Angelina Jolie's American, but she put on a British accent to play her.
Oh, did she? Okay, okay. I feel like the one that they just did, I don't know if she has a British accent or not.
Yeah.
Um, Jason again? Thank you, man. I love what the 2 of you are doing. Let's get more exploring and finding possible new discovery. I thought you were speaking Rapa Nui for a second.
Some ancient runga runga. Yeah. With well, yeah, we plan on just keeping doing this. And thanks, guys. Oh, Chuck! You can just see
What
Chuck's
was
chucking in
what was
some.
the, what did you think, on this on making possible new discoveries? What was the most shocking thing that you learned, from the island? And
Um,
we may have already covered it, but I'm just curious if there's anything else in particular that kinda sparks.
well, I was shocked. Yeah, apart from shock of how like new everything was supposed to be, that really shocked me. And I think the shocking, just the amount of the like magnetic anomalies was a weird thing to witness. And there's something I didn't even. I'm saving it for the video, but there's another big weird stone that apparently is not native to the island, brought to the island by the original 7, and it has like magnetic navigating properties, and it might be part of the puzzle piece to how they found
Okay,
the island.
end it there so no one takes your video.
I'm gonna end it, but yeah. So I think that was probably the most like, what? Like there's a lot of stone that does stuff with magnetic energies around there.
How interesting. Yeah, you know, ancient cultures, they had to be much more familiar with uh, the with effective ways of interacting with their natural environment than we are today. You
Oh,
know?
10 times more intuitive and like clever and
Yeah, exactly. You want to take this one?
Dragon Truth. Says mud flood, like the old world buildings. Also, the bird Tangata Manu resembles Göbekli Tepe. Yeah, so the bird man and the birds, the way that it's inscripted, it looks a lot like the Easter Island stuff. And
Okay, so Birdman, that's Göbekli Tepe.
so Birdman is the culture on the island.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
And it's carved into some stones, and it's carved into the back of my favorite moai, the hidden one.
Okay, gotcha.
And the way that they've carved the Birdman, it's kind of from the side, and it looks very much like the eagle and the other birds that are on the back of at Göbekli Tepe.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also, I mean,
stylistically, it's very similar.
aren't some of the statues like they're standing in very similar poses, or they have their hands
Oh,
at least in similar poses?
identical. And this was another thing that I was like trying to weigh up. I'm like, what are the chances of some Rapa Nui master stonemason, like the design of it seemed very kind of again out of nowhere, and all of them have these hands that are these long fingers, slender hands right on the crotch, right on exactly where all of the stuff like the Earther Man and some of the oldest stuff that's coming out of the ground right now, identical hands with the long fingers. Me and Chuck took a long time counting whether sometimes we were like, oh my god, do they have 6 fingers? And then we're like, no, watch again, look again, but because they're so long, but they definitely have 5. But
Okay.
but
I was
yeah,
about to say,
so
six fingers is something that you see in the Maya world. A lot of people in the Maya world have 6 fingers.
have 6 fingers. Cool. Useful. Maybe.
Okay. All right. My Things Redux. Thank you for the 2 big ones. I have the answers probably coming soon.
Dun dun
Okay.
dun.
Yeah, well, my or at least my email is public. I would love to hear the answers that you have. But thank you very much for the big dono. We appreciate it. All right. Oh my goodness. Wait.
Dragon Truth's back at again.
Okay. Well, thank you guys very much. Y'all are generous today.
Arioi, a secret religious tribe in the Tahiti Society Islands. The Medes were called Arioi. So the Persian people, cultures, rituals came to the islands. Oh, so they share. I mean, I'd need to start researching it, but they share. Tahiti Islands share rituals with Persian culture.
Interesting. Send a fleshed out email. I'd love to. Love to know more about this. It's either Tahiti or it's Fiji. That I read a book called The Far Lands. I don't know if you've ever seen this before, but it's a strange book about people in the late colonial age exploring the Pacific and finding other tribes of people already living on or Pacific Islanders already living on these islands. And there was an English trading ship that was going through the ocean. I think they ended up on Tahiti. And there was this little colony. It's either Tahiti or Fiji, but there's like 50 Englishmen living there, but it's both men and women. And they established this colony. And they had been living there for 200 years now with the indigenous people, but they split the island. And this is a true story. And they split the island. And there's this crazy story of they see another English boat approaching. I guess this is now the 1800s, but they'd been there since the early 1700s or the 1600s, definitely over 100 years. And this boat approaches, and it's another English boat. The only other boat to visit the island is 100-something years later. It's an English boat. And they're coming up to the island and they see people out on the shore. And as they get closer and closer, they start hearing, "Hey, hey," and they hear people screaming in English from the island. And these guys pull up to the island and they're thinking, "Oh, these must be like, shipwrecked Englishmen. We need to rescue them." And they're like, "What are you guys doing here?" And they end up saying something. They end up talking to them, and they meet these teenage kids, and they're asking them about England. They're like, "Oh, have you ever been here in England? I've heard about this. I've heard about this." And they're like, "Do these kids not realize that we're like all the way across the planet from England right now?" And they just don't realize, these kids. It's just a fascinating story about an English colony on Fiji or Tahiti. I don't know where I got off on that, but yeah,
Well,
check out the books of Farlands. It's for anybody
Farland.
watching. Super interesting. And I don't know, since I've been studying ancient history, and then I got into the Americas, like ancient American history, you slowly get into the history of like people discovering all of the islands around the Americas and then interacting with people. And then that becomes its own era of history that you find interesting too. All right, Chuck. Hey, man. Thank you so much for the 20 big ones. Viva
la Raiders.
Yeah. I'm not sure what Irana means. Do you know what that means?
No, but
I don't know if it's Rapa Nui or if it's Spanish that I'm not recognizing. But Chuck, thank you so much, man. Hey, it's been great to hang out with you at Cosmic and on our trip, and can't wait to do some more trips in the future. I think you should join Nick and I when we go to Cambodia next year. Just throwing that out there. That might be something that comes up. And then here, I'll let you read the last one.
From Corey Ash says, "Keep exploring, y'all. We will. We are."
Yes.
You just got to keep saving up for airfare.
Yeah.
Airfare and battery packs, and we'll be there.
Oh, it's Rapa Nui for amazing.
Oh, well, Chuck was doing his homework, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Chuck is definitely in if we do an Azores expedition.
Oh yeah. That's definitely got to be in the works. We should definitely do something like that, like an Azores retreat, get a nice cabin for all the raiders, and have cookouts and stuff. That'd be really fun. So, well, Johanna, bringing it into land, what do you have?
Yes.
What do you have going on between now and the next time we meet?
Now I've got to do now I've been out and done all the adventuring, and now I've got to do the bit where you sit at home and you edit for hours, and I've got to try and like put all my conscious thoughts and ideas and theories and make something fun and entertaining for you guys. So video coming soon. And then just researching. I've been researching a lot this week, just constantly filling my brain with stuff, and just like taking notes. I'll park. I'm like, that'd be a really good TikTok. I'll park that, and
you always learn so much after you visited the site, and then you start studying about it. You can only study about a place you haven't been so much, because once you get there, you don't even recognize the things that you were studying. It's like you got to relearn it all again once you're there. Then when you go home and begin studying an area an ancient cultural area of the world, the context of that you've already seen just improves your knowledge like tenfold. So that's awesome. I cannot wait to see your videos.
And send me updates when you're in Peru and all the stuff that you find.
Maybe we do like some kind of collab video where I will try to go find exactly the same stonework that you saw on Easter Island. I will try to take an identical photo somewhere in Peru, and then maybe we work together and do something together on it. So so everybody, tomorrow morning I'm headed to Peru. I'm going to Lima, and then I'm going to Cusco, and I'm going to see Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, all of those megalithic stone blocks that are like the size of gigantic pillows that are perfectly squished together, and gonna be filming some videos out there. And after that, I have 3 more weeks at my day job, and we'll have one more randomly scheduled, random episode like this. I feel like the last 7 episodes of Raiders, like you have to have your notifications on because you have no idea when the episode's actually
We
gonna
just
come out.
pop up, but we're gonna get regular scheduled
Yeah,
Mondays.
yeah, yeah.
It's happening.
Yeah, everybody leave leave a comment. I'm sure it's been kind of hectic if you've wanted to like catch us live. I know that it's been kind of difficult lately.
Yeah, let us know
So
when's best for you. Well,
yeah, so we're gonna have yeah, and leave in the comments like the time, what time zone you're in and what time you would like us to go live, because after this, so I've got this week I'm doing in Peru. I've got 3 more weeks of my day job after that. So during those 3 weeks, we're gonna have one more episode we're just gonna pop up, and then
surprise!
after that, I go to Egypt for 2.5 weeks, and then I go to Guatemala for a week and a half, and we may be able to fit in an episode somewhere in there. And
Mhm.
after I get back from Guatemala, we are beginning our regularly scheduled program. So we will have a day and a time every month that we will be on, and as the show continues to grow, we may do like one more episode a month, but that'll happen naturally. So but we will start again once a month, but it'll be on a certain day at a certain time every month, and so that's coming soon. So
All right. Perfect. Well, have a fantastic time. Keep me in the loop, bro, and you don't fall off a mountain. That'd be great.
yes, ma'am, I will
'Cause
try my
we've
best
got
to not do
plans.
that.
Great.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So, well, hey, Johanna, it was great to see you again. It was great to
This is
see
it
all of you
one.
Raiders again, and looking forward to hanging out with everybody again very soon. Raiders, we'll see y'all next time.
We out.